that mid game. A lot of times Rush War is all about kind of those swing turns. They, early board states, they can sometimes snowball, but a lot of times it's about who can outmuscle their opponent in that mid game. Because if you get ahead by, 3-4 big minions, then you could stick some damage and then end the game with weapons. And Alexstrasza, ShuiMoo, Ogremancer, get that out of here. But other than that, Imprison Gnar conditioning opening hand, looking good.
Yeah, it's a weird mishmash of a hand because the player who has Gnar going second, if the player doesn't have Gnar going first, is normally going to curve out a little bit better because of that and be ahead on board. But ShuiMoo also has the backup plan, right, of having Blademaster Samuro with the buffs in hand to be able to swing back if he falls behind. So it is a weird bit of a mishmash. I think given this hand with the Gnar, he'd quite happily swap one of these cards for a Tent Trasher, right, so he can actually curve out very aggressively. But it's a very decent looking opening hand from ShuiMoo's side. I should apologize in advance for my pronunciation of both these players. I will pronounce these names seemingly at random and in about 20 different ways throughout the course of this series, I'm sure, but I apologize. I am just a poor, ignorant British man with a barely competent understanding of one language.
Same.
No! You are neither British, nor do you have an understanding of one language, TJ.
I'm like first generation American, actually.
Yeah, fair enough.
Most of my extended family was born in England. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
So
as you are so keen to remind me. This conversation normally leads to you saying the word car park quite often. Is that where we're going?
Nope, today it's garage.
Okay. I don't even
close though. Garage. Cars go in both. So,
True.
It's a theme here today. As there always is. I, like Briarthorn, former America's Grandmaster, love my themes. Citic Swampoo's coming in pretty handy there. Going to allow for a little bit of some board presence and cashing in on the damage as well by trading in that bumper cards for the ETC. Absolutely not necessary with the way the board state was. It only had 2 health. But just, 1, it wants it to die, I guess, so you can have the Dark Moon Riders in, and 2, just pushing the extra 2 damage.
Yeah, Ooze, even though not being a tech card, I would assume is designed for this matchup, does do some reasonably good work there. But now you see the hand coming in for ShuiMoo, right? Where it's... I said he was ahead at the start and he should be looking to push tempo, but having now had that shut down by a combination of the bumper car and the Ooze on the other side, he has the perfect hand to be able to re-establish through that mid-game.
Certainly does. Meanwhile, HSKeDaiBiao, thinking about Ogremancer over Watley. Usually I'd like to just spend the mana on Watley as soon as I possibly can. Obviously, just to get as much value as possible from it in case you can't find time to play it, need to respond to the board, and then end up drawing Dragons, Pirates, Mechs, whatever in the interim. But also because it gives you more options going into the next few turns, or lets you plan a little bit better depending on like which dragon you pick up, for instance, whether it's Tent Trash or Alexstrasza. So I like to play.
There must be a way.
I agree. I think there's an argument to say that Ogremancer was decent on that turn because it's kind of the only turn you're really able to predict a spell from your opponent, right? Turn 5 being the rank 2 conditioning turn that you expect it to come down. So if you don't get value out of it now, when do you get value out of it? But I think the perfect response to that is I don't care. Like, I'm going to get enough value with the rest of my hand by playing Ringmaster Watley early, as TJ was saying, that, ideally he doesn't have to play that Ogremancer at any point throughout the game because it's just a bad card in the matchup.
Yep. Speaking of bad card in the match, well, when it's buffed, it's not as bad, but still not great. ShuiMoo just gonna take the opportunity though to play conditioning here. He can afford to play this a little bit slower because he does have the Blademaster Samuro buffed by a lot to get a swing on the board. So I don't think he's too particularly concerned. His worry here would be if HSKeDaiBiao doesn't didn't develop much, and instead went for a conditioning on his own after Remaster Watley, knowing that he wouldn't be able to go resource for resource.
My question, TJ, I like the not playing a minion here because there's no real reason to. My question was the armor up over the second conditioning, because yes, I understand that his plan for this was to let his opponent play cards and then he's just going to go conditioning into Blade Master Samurai. But he could have done that last turn, had 2 less health, and also just be playing an ETC this turn, which is, what, a 5/8 at this point? Like, yeah, you could just have a whole extra 5/8 on the board and have 2 less health. Like, what was the armor for on the previous turn?
So he traded having a 5/8 on board in order to give his next draw, potentially, if it was a minion, +2/+2.
Yep.
So I would probably take the 5/8 in that situation because 1, you're not guaranteed to draw a minion. 2, you don't know what that minion's going to be. And 3, it's a 5/8.
It is, yes.
5/8s are large. 5 attack, 8 health to be exact. So I agree with you. But we got to move past it, right? It's all about taking hits and moving on.
Not me, TJ. I live firmly rooted in the past, and I will harp on this moment for the rest of the series. No, I won't. You're absolutely right. We can move on.
Okay.
For a good time.
HSKeDaiBiao does find an answer to this Blade Master Samurai, but really needs conditioning, Overlord run deck, something to be able to turn this measly group of weak minions into powerful, just hit the gym, working on the gains minions.
Mm-hmm.
They're just so big. They're large and in charge. Look at HSKeDaiBiao, he's just giggling.
No. TJ, no, they're large and in rush. Okay, come on, figure it out.
Neither of these have rush.
They certainly don't have charge.
They're just as close to having charge as they are to having rush.
Incorrect.
HSKeDaiBiao?
ETC literally has the word rush on it.
Doesn't make it any closer to having rush itself. All right, conditioning picked up. That was a card that I said was absolutely necessary. Ogremancer does get value for ShuiMoo. It's insane. Not really. It's just 1/2/2, but I mean that's all you can hope for. The question is, how does HSKeDaiBiao fight back? Has the opportunity to isolate this Ogremancer, but does.
Oh no. Not again,
TJ. The
TJ.
same facial expression that I did. His camera's there, so I'm not sure if it's ShuiMoo or HSKeDaiBiao that's disconnected. But the game 1 curse. We're 2 for 2 on disconnect so far in these quarterfinals in game number 1.
Perfect timing. Come back just in time to see the second disconnect. But yeah, if you weren't with us earlier on, I believe Okashinsuke had some disconnect issues of his own, which did, unfortunately for him, end up in a game loss, which could have contributed to the series loss overall on his part. He won't be feeling too bad about it because he will be, I imagine, receiving the invitation to Hearthstone Grandmasters because of his standing already. Did see a Discord screenshot from him as well, where he said he's probably going to buy himself a new PC with some of this prize money that he's picked up, which sounds like a good idea based on some of those issues. But sucks to see. Obviously not how we want the day to be starting. We want this as smooth and as easy for both of these players so that we really can find the winner of this series on the board. And I think the opening game was just kind of heating up. It was just getting to that real crunch point, right? You were saying how HSKeDaiBiao needed the buff to be able to do anything to fight back against this. He did find exactly that. So we don't want this game to be falling apart at this crucial juncture, TJ.
Yeah, even though it has a good amount of resources, still going to be difficult to fight back here for HSKeDaiBiao, just because double conditioning on the other side for ShuiMoo. There is a lot of potential damage coming up. Troublemaker here. If this clears both minions, HSKeDaiBiao just doesn't have a chance. Oh, wow, okay.
Oh,
I would take the risk in this situation. I hit face every time here. I trust my troublemakers.
There's 3 levels, right? Yeah, like ShuiMoo's just going down the scale. He's now gone to the medium play, which is to trade into the smaller minion and trust that your
all right, here we go.
Trust that your ruffians are going to hit the larger minion. But then the baller move, the level 3 play, yeah, is just a shit face and hope that they take out both. But he does end up preserving some health on his Ogremancer, at least.
Yeah. So if you don't clear any minions, I mean, just straight up, your 3/3s are more likely to hit minions if you go face.
You get
going for the middle ground.
7% and a 50% instead of just straight up 2 50/50s, right? So it's a little bit more likely to get the first one.
Yeah. You also push 8 damage.
Yep.
Which we established earlier in this series that 8 is a big number, whether it's health or attack or damage. Still a lot.
Or in the case of America's Grandmasters standings, points.
That's a huge number. I mean, nobody could beat it. Literally nobody except for Gosei. But that's going to be game. Alex draws in hand for ShuiMoo. HSKeDaiBiao, a decent start, just got muscled out of this game because of the double conditioning from ShuiMoo. So nice little Rush Warrior series to open up. I keep mentioning it, but it feels like out of all the matchups possible in the series, the Rush Warrior mirror is like the least important. Obviously still important, but the least important because Rush Warrior does seem like it's pretty likely to take a win at some point, given its matchup spread. But still, advantage nonetheless for ShuiMoo to take a nice game 1 victory.
Yeah, it certainly seemed that way on stream, but we can run into this kind of perception issue sometimes when we broadcast Masters Tours, where the games that we see on stream end up being a very small sample size and don't end up being totally reflective of the way the tournament as a whole has gone, because if you look at overall win rates, Warrior only has about 52%. You'd expect it to have trended back fairly close to 50 just because it has the most games in the tournament. It's played nearly 3,500 games of Hearthstone during this Masters Tour at a 52% win rate. But if you look at specifically a matchup that we keep saying is very free, right? Like we keep saying Rush Warrior will get out of this series for sure because the opponent has Rogue and Warrior's just going to win that matchup. That matchup is only 57% for the Warrior in this tournament, which, don't get me wrong, that's a good matchup.
Only?
But oh yeah, that's what I'm saying. But still, like if you play that matchup 100 times, the Rogue is going to win 43 of them. That's what that means. And we've been presenting it as this kind of guaranteed free win for the Warrior, and it's actually not that unlikely that the Rogue can reverse in that situation. So sure. I do totally agree with your point, but I just have to make clear that when we say that, you know, it's not the most important win, of course it is still important to win with any of your decks in Conquest and get it out of the series.
Yep. What I said was still correct, though, because I said least important, not important. So I just want to clarify that. I understand we're not on hot takes, and I don't need to clarify that I'm right, but...
It's okay, TJ. No one's on the other side of this argument. We're not competing against each other. We're a team, okay? We're working together on this one.
It's just hard to get that in my brain, you know, because we never cast together. We just do hot takes together, and then I start to get into this combative, argumentative mood, and then I just can't help myself.
And even when we hang out socially, TJ will just call me in the middle of the night and we'll just have an argument. That's just what we do in our social lives as well. We're just very used to it.
Yeah, or I request the hotel room that's next to him, and it's one of those double hotel rooms with the door in the middle.
With the door, yeah.
And then I just pick the lock in the middle of the night and just walk right up and say, Saddle, I got a bone to pick with you. Oh, look at that. Persian air conditioning. Oh. What a pair. What a pair.
Insane. ShuiMoo on the other side, extremely mediocre hand. I'm sure all of this will be being tossed away. The only good news about this hand is that throwing away Il'gynoth drastically reduces the opportunities for Il'gynoth to come back into your hand post-mulligan. That is still not much of an improvement on the other side. Nothing restrictive, nothing non-dumpable so far for the OTK Demon Hunter, but also no real card draw in the opening hand outside of Chaos Strike. So he'll be hoping something to help him formulate a plan will come along fairly soon, which is usually in the form of Illidari Studies, Double Jump, Skull of Gul'dan. Basically, Skull and cards that can get you to Skull.
Oh, Chaos Strike can get him one step closer.
Yeah.
Nothing to attack into, though. And plenty of time to spend the mana. I don't think nothing to attack into is really that big of a deal, but let's say he's worried about a parade leader being just played onto the board on turn 2, would not have an answer, or not have an efficient answer in hand, whereas holding onto the Chaos Strike does give him an efficient answer. So I think it's wise to hold on to it here, just go for the hero power.
Yeah, I completely agree with this. So we actually tested this matchup a lot for GM, and I found that sources of 3 damage were actually very good in the early game. Surprisingly, so was Ethereal Orc Merchant. I think that's true in a lot of matchups, and it's not something that a lot of people really appreciate. Because people quite heavily view this as a combo deck, and erroneously so in some cases. Just playing a 2-1 on 1 is good for most decks, and Demon Hunter is very chief amongst that as well. But just having a 2-1 that you can play to challenge a parade leader, or even having I-Beam or Chaos Strike hero power, as you're talking about, just to make sure you don't get run out of the game by parade leader or playmaker in the early game and you're able to answer them.
Forget the Gab Jam, Sottle. I am all about the HSKeDaiBiao Jam.
Doesn't quite have the same ring to it. I'm not sure that'll be coming to any emote slots near you anytime soon. But it's not any less entertaining, I will give you that much.
A lot more subtle, which I appreciate.
Job's done.
Skull picked up, but there's a lot of mana to get through before that's going to be an outcast position. Probably on either side. Chaos Strikes will need to be cast as well to get it to the left. Can't guarantee that you'll ever be able to cast it from the right. Oh?
That is a fantastic draw, though, this turn.
Yeah.
Chaos Strike, hero power, Acidic Swamp Ooze. Actually a pretty decent board swing as well.
Yep. I like it.
Wait. What position was that Chaos Strike at the start of the turn? It was still to the left of the skull, right? It was the.
It was to the left of the skull. Both Chaos
Okay.
Strikes were to the left of the skull, yes.
That's fine.
Still quite healthy also. Oh, okay. HSKeDaiBiao has the option to go for Conditioning and Rakara this turn and keep these minions on the board pretty healthy. Also has the option to just Overlord Runthak, which threatens the recurring buffs. And if the board is not dealt with, then could proceed to play the Rakara on the following turn alongside another one of these minions. With the, or just with the conditioning. So this is quite good.
There's a slightly weird third play there, which was worth considering as well, which was to drop the conditioning, play the Tent Trasher, and actually just trade with your 2/2 just to have a 7/7 on the board, because high health minions are kind of the nightmare for OTK Demon Hunter to be able to clear on the other side. But I think that's probably a little too fancy. I respect this line of play for sure.
Demons. Demons.
Yep, it's just the level 1, which I enjoy. Because it's basic. That describes me quite well.
You're paying for my discretion.
Okay.
Job's done.
And it's still left on board, though.
Yes.
And Rakara plus the Warmaw Challenger here could be pretty big. Warmaw Challenger would attack twice, get the Rakara buff twice. Rakara could go into the 2/1, and then the minions could go face. Problem is you'd have a lot of like medium-sized things on the board, which is ripe for an Immolation Aura, and not one that ShuiMoo would have to use too many resources to buff up. But still pretty good. But it looks like a conditioning play with this bumper car trade is going to be what HSKeDaiBiao is going to go for here.
Just play the Warmaw straight up. as a 413, which is pretty strong. So originally, what? It would have had 11 health. It would have taken 8 damage from the 2 attacks, which is 3, and then gained 2 from the 2 Rakara effects. So it would have ended up with 5 health. So yeah, I kind of like this, right? Like it leaves a significantly bigger threat on the board, even though it looks a little bit strange to not be developing the Rakara. This is what I was talking about just high health minions sticking to board. He leaves himself with a 4-9, which is a much higher total than he would have had from doing it the other way around with the Rakara. I really like it.
Yep. ShuiMoo could set up for Skull this turn with Talented Arcanist and a Fell Screen Blast. Talented Arcanist, Fell Screen Blast, and I-Beam. So Talented Arcanist, I-Beam would... there's no way to clear off the Warmaul Challenger. So I think you'd hold the I-Beam in that case.
I agree. Yep. Deck is still packed with Moargs. You still have a Philosophy in your hand, so that I-Beam can certainly operate a lot of value. It can be your snipe for a Troublemaker, for example, if that comes later. It could come this turn, of course, because HSKeDaiBiao still has the coin available, but dealing with those individual high health minions is a big problem, as I keep mentioning, so Moarg I-Beam is usually one of your best ways of doing that, so I do certainly like holding on to it if you can't get the full clear.
HSKeDaiBiao has Rakara Coin Tent Trasher here. Warmaul Challenger could go face, Tent Trasher go in the 1-3.
I'm not too young to fight.
There's many ways to do this actually. You could keep the Tent Trasher there, but it's going to have 8 health regardless if it attacks or not. I think you'd prefer to have your highest health target have the most attack. Instead of trading the Rakara, right? So that the Tent Trasher has 9 attack instead of 8 and is the healthiest minions.
Poor Warlock.
Starts with Skull, does hit Moarg, does hit Philosophy now as well. Ooh, okay. Okay.
Wait.
Problem is there's no way now to get this I-Beam into outcast position, so it can't be cast this turn, which means the threat of lethal is very real on the other side.
Yeah, but he just got lethal himself the next turn.
He does. Whoa! Oh, the I-Beam is huge. Does that give him a significant amount of extra security here? Doesn't kill anything. Does the extra 3 health just straight up play around anything? So it kind of does, right? There's 19 on the other side, so healing this turn plays around weapon.
Healing this turn plays around weapon. Doesn't play around Troublemaker.
Nope.
If he played a Moarg in this case and then I-beamed, he would kill the Rakara, so it'd be safe from essentially everything, but then would only have 24 damage next turn. 25, I guess, if you consider the hero power, since all of that would be playable. So if hoping that the expensive sub comes down, so there's 25 damage available next turn.
The Sword Eater did come into hand. We saw it in the last series we cast together, right? The crucial Sword Eater top deck when a player chose not to play around that situation, ended up getting punished for it. ShuiMoo choosing to do something just a little bit different. And now, can HSKeDaiBiao work out that he needs to gain the armor in order to play around this damage breakpoint on the other side?
Nope.
No, he cannot.
Yeah, I mean, opponent has 5 cards in hand, 2 of which only 1 of which you know is a Moarg, and everything else you have no read on.
TJ, I'm with you, but I have to present the other side of the argument. You are at exactly 24.
Okay, it didn't matter.
It didn't matter at all, but okay. You are at exactly 24 though, right? And that's the number. That's the fair number that Demon Hunter can do to you. So sometimes it is worth considering that. But I do agree that in the vast majority of situations, probably including this one, your best solution is to worry about pressure first and your health total second. So I'm very much on board with the way that HSKeDaiBiao has played this.
Yep. And that was close. That was incredibly close. It didn't matter at the end whether or not he armored up, like you said, but did have a ton of damage on the board. If ShuiMoo didn't pick up healing in that situation and maybe had to dump the IV in his hand or something along those lines to try and heal out of range of the couple of outs that HSKeDaiBiao had, yeah, you're looking at a different game. But a nice win picked up now, 2-0 for ShuiMoo, and only the Rogue remaining, which has been, kind of the deck that's been not targeted, but been able to be targeted in lineups the most, right? It does feel like in a lot of cases it's been struggling, especially when we talk about like these are just standard lineups that we're seeing in the field. So still a chance for HSKeDaiBiao, but yeah, even if you're looking at 40% win rate across the board for the Rogue, which is not the case, there's some better matchups in there, including a 50-50 in the mirror match. You're still looking at an unfavored series for HSKeDaiBiao. So ShuiMoo on the verge of a top 4 appearance.
Yeah, and HSKeDaiBiao is arguably the player, again, with more on the line in this series, right? Because ShuiMoo is a Chinese representative. They kind of play in their own system. They're not subject to the same Grandmasters system as the rest of the world is. So they kind of play in these Masters tours just for prize money and prestige and just the title that comes with winning. Whereas HSKeDaiBiao, if you missed the start of the series, although he is choosing to be represented under the Chinese flag, he is currently resident in Hong Kong, which we believe, currently existing information, means that he will receive an invitation to APAC Grandmasters if he qualifies with enough points. And that number of points comes from winning this series, where he will be in a position to potentially accept that invitation. So it's a huge series for him to be able to win.
Yes, it is, but it's not looking good right now, as staring down a 2-0 score, and does have some good matchups remaining. But when we're talking about some mirror matchups, or just one mirror matchup, right, with the Rogue, it's so volatile, right? So can't put much faith in that one. But Token Druid, Rush Warrior, I think those are reasonable matchups. Rush Warrior incredibly favored. Token Druid, there's debate, right, as to who's favored in that one. I have a lot of faith in the Token Druid. I think it may be a slight favorite, but the Rogue connoisseurs out there will tell you that it's Rogue favored all the way. But for now, we're going to start off with the Rush Warrior matchup. Best one that HSKeDaiBiao has to go against that Rogue, trying to get away first, maybe get some momentum on his side. Not the best opening hand, and that, that's a good hand from ShuiMoo.
Yes, short of a certain 8-armed mechanoid, that is about as good as this opening gets for Rogue. Mankrik anchors Akkas in the opener, Foxy Fraud for a little bit of tempo alongside that as well. And even, as I was talking about in the previous matchup, Demon Hunter has limited ways to deal 3 damage to key minions in the early game. Rogue is very similar. So having access to Foxy Fraud Brain Freeze to be able to do exactly this is actually a really big deal.
Ooh. HSKeDaiBiao, though, does have the muscle hand.
Yes.
Lots of big, beefy things that can get even bigger and beefier. And that might be able to pull him out of this situation. But I'm looking at the Kazakus to be the kind of stamp on ShuiMoo's side to really pull ahead. If he can get a good, like, proactive golem, or even just like any type of board control golem, and then pick up even more ways to solidify his lead, we could be looking at a pretty swift end to this series. HSKeDaiBiao, thinking of what's the best play here. Obviously, Overload Runtak has a ton of reasonable options. It would bump the buff the Blade Master Samuro, but at the same time, it would just get value traded on the board against the Mankrik. The Sword Eater blocks some damage, still gets...
That was all great analysis, TJ, and I'm going to let you finish in a minute, but that was the greatest wife draw of all time. Oh my goodness. In the bad matchup, 2-0 up. That is the break point that you need to find. Just a whole extra 3-7 out of nowhere. And that could be that way to consolidate this board that you were talking about, TJ.
It's just brutal. It is brutal. Even has coin prize plunder to take out this Sword Eater. I'm guessing that ShuiMoo picked Divine Shield and give minions +2/+2. There it is. You could see it. Knew that he would have a board lead going into this turn. Knows that HSKeDaiBiao would have trouble clearing up a lot of it because there's no conditioning, no Runtak played. Blade Master Samuro would not be able to clear off much of this board and is going to be heavily rewarded for this. This is an insane lead on the board. Even with the buff here, I don't think HSKeDaiBiao really has the tools to get there unless ShuiMoo completely gasses out over the next few turns.
5/9 is used to trade though, which I think you at least have to think about ever so slightly because of the threat of the one card that potentially beats you in this situation, the Blade Master Samuro coming back the other way. Then having access to just a 5/9 minion might just be to your benefit. And with the conditioning draw now found, there is maybe a small window of hope for that Blade Master Samuro to be able to do something useful here.
Yeah, it could clear off the Man Crick and the Prize Plunder, leaving 5 damage on board, and HSKeDaiBiao would still be left with a 3/8 or 3/3 in that situation. Not the best, but honestly, I think it's important. If he goes for Runtak in this situation, I just feel like it's too slow. Would still end up taking 10 points of damage, and actually would have died because the Golem attack with the minions, Shadow Step to Golem, and Wicked Step would have been lethal.
Yeah, it's why Divine Shield +2/+2 is actually a low-key good combination when you do actually stick an early board, because the nature of the Golem having Divine Shield or Stealth is very similar, means that it's hard to deal with, right? So you can get repeated value out of it on subsequent turns with a Shadow Step or a Tenwu. So crucial there for HSKeDaiBiao to be able to clear the board as effectively as possible, and can do so, and does so with the Blade Master Samuro. And I will just go back one more time and ask that question about whether it was worth trading differently to preserve the higher health minion on the board to play around those kind of scenarios.
Ooh. Okay. ShuiMoo kind of whiffs on this Foxy Fraud field contact. It does have the Shadow Step for the field contact though, so it can keep this up. But if he stalls out here for a little bit, which is unlikely because of the field contact, this is HSKeDaiBiao's opportunity to try and get a little bit of a lead on the board. Ogremancer is pretty big. I am
no
afraid
There's
leave this on the board.
Way.
Because knows that there's a 1-mana field contact in hand, and leaving the Golem on the board when that happens, even though he's seen a Shadow Step, means that Tenwu picked up, second Shadow Step picked up, ShuiMoo could build up a massive board. And, you know, maybe HSKeDaiBiao will get a couple tutus in the way, but that will not be his biggest problem. All things. All right.
Really? I was about to say, if this Ogremancer comes down, that is the bravest play I have ever seen in my life. And you might be able to substitute the word brave for...
Potion!
I'm not entirely sure. Potion of Illusion! That's another field contact in hand. That's another massive +2/+2 buff. It's a value trade with the Foxy Fraud, and it's 7 to face. Was this Ogremancer ever really the play, TJ?
I get it, right? It's the hardest card in his hand to play, but he opened up a huge opportunity for ShuiMoo to just essentially create an unkillable board. And he can clear up a lot of this, but it just doesn't feel like enough. There's not really being represented in hand for ShuiMoo, but it's very close. There is 9 damage with 2 Wand Thieves in hand, a 1-mana field contact, a secret passage, just looking for a Wicked Stab, literally any points of damage. And there it is. First draw off the top.
Whoa, 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 whoa! There's an Ogomancer! There's an Ogomancer on the board! Chill out! Okay, we're fine. We're fine, but he definitely did not know he was fine when he played that first Wicked Stab.
Yeah. Well, that was a quick series, and unfortunately for HSKeDaiBiao, his aspirations of becoming a Grandmaster have been swept out from underneath him. And good performance from the match store overall, but will fall just a little bit short. And a big one for ShuiMoo. There's a good amount of Chinese representatives in the top 8, and already have one making his way to the semi-finals in ShuiMoo.
Yeah, very solid performance. I think solid performances from China have become more and more of a story as Masters Tours have gone on. I think they are arguably the best region in the world, you know, and I say that as a card-carrying, flag-waving member of the European Hearthstone community. I think China have absolutely crushed it, and we will hopefully get to hear a little bit more of that when we get into some of the Chinese players later on, with Lee, for example, who I have chosen as